Hi, I'm Kane, and today I'm going to go through the multi-channel limiter called Elixir by Flux. It's a VST for both Mac and PC, and although most limiters and compressors are pretty similar in the actual results they try to achieve, Elixir is a particularly good one with a great overall layout too, so let's take a look. So, this is the overall layout of Elixir. To the left, we have the input gain and the output gains, which are fairly self-explanatory, with a bypass switch underneath, so you can bypass and compare the compressed signal to the original signal. Above the output gain, you'll see three buttons: diff, higher res, and makeup. When the diff button is activated, you'll hear what's equivalent to a null test, which means you basically hear the processed signal inverted and summed with the unprocessed signal, allowing you to only hear the affected signal, which can be quite handy for checking to hear how much the transients of a signal are being affected, for example. The higher res button switches to a more complicated algorithm that uses a higher amount of CPU, so it's definitely worth using, but only if your project and your computer can allow for it. Then there's the makeup button. Basically compensates for the gain reduction of your threshold. So if, for example, I was going to set the threshold of a compressor to compress signals above -3 dB, then the makeup button will automatically push the output signal by 3 dB to make up for the loss of overall gain set by that threshold. In the center of the compressor, you'll find a channel link slider here, which controls how variable the compression is between the left and right channels of a stereo file. Above that is a dynamic button, which sets the compressor to automatically adjust the channel link amount, depending on the workload of the compressor. So, for example, if you're heavily compressing a stereo channel and there's a much bigger transient on the left than there is on the right, then with this dynamic button activated, the compressor will treat channels separately when needed. Below the channel link slider is the stages slider, which you can set to anything between 1 and 5 stages. This basically means that the signal can be processed at multiple stages of the gain reduction. So, for example, when it's set to 3 stages and the threshold is at -3, then the first stage will limit at -1 dB, and the second stage at -2, and the third stage at -3, and so on, which means that analysing is done at each stage, which leads to a more natural sound and generally much less saturation from any spikes in the signal. The next slider is the speed slider. This is actually a combination of attack and release curves with the amount of look-ahead the compressor uses, which is by default set to 50%, and to be honest, it's probably best left that way, as increasing it can lead to more distortion unless you're using a particularly consistent signal and a gentle compression setting. Then the final dial available here is the threshold amount, which is used for setting the threshold point at which the compressor starts to reduce the gain levels of any signal. This means that when it's set to -3 dB, only signals above -3 dB will be compressed, and the higher above -3 dB the signal goes, the more compression is applied to the signal. This is generally the fundamental theory of compression in its most basic form. Along the bottom of the compressor, you'll notice a slider that moves from A to B, with a save, recall, and copy button either side of it. This is really a handy tool for when you want to compare different settings and presets, so you can load a preset or setting into each one and then slide between the two to compare. And then the last thing to mention are the meters to the right-hand side of the compressor. This is where you'll find the input on the left, the output on the right, and the amount of compression or gain reduction in the center. So I'll leave you now with a loop of a track playing in the background while I adjust some of the settings so that you can actually see what happens as and when I adjust them. So that's Elixir from Flux. It's available for both Mac and PC now. It's a superb limiter with some really clever functions and a really friendly interface as well. And most importantly, it's got a really natural sound to it. So I hope you like it as much as I do. See you soon.